Welcome to Biddeford, or welcome back really. Monologues aren't typically my thing, but sometimes it's important to speak from the heart, and that's actually why we're here. The locals didn't really like the first show that we did about this place. Basically, a bunch of people called and told me that I was, as the French say, well, avoir un peu de travail, which means farting out of my mouth, ears and nose, sideways, probably all at the same time. The folks that wrote and emailed in said that I missed the mark and the soul of this place, which was kind of weird to me because I live here too. I didn't reveal that because I wasn't trying to make the show about me. It was supposed to be about the people. Either way, we were accused of using too broad a brush and too colorful a tone, so we came back. To find out why we got knocked around so hard by the Biddeffordians, you're gonna have to watch part 1 and part 2. Tell us what you think. Feel free to judge. We're always open. All right, now it's time for me to shut up so you can see Maine by the mile. Biddeford. A select group of Mainers call it Lewiston by the Sea, and that's not a compliment. It's among Maine's 7 largest cities, and Biddeford is undergoing a transformation of sorts right now. The gritty community, once dominated by textile mills, is now home to trendy tech labs, restaurants all dressed up in industrial chic, and it has quite the beach a few miles from downtown, too. So, does Biddeford deserve its hard-knock reputation? We went to investigate. I'm Dustin, that's Rachel, she's Julia. 3 occasionally clueless 20-somethings who work at a TV station. We are a reporter, producer, and photographer who got the chance to explore Maine, meet the people succeeding, the people struggling, and find out just what is there to do and see in a state almost as quirky as we are. In other words, we saw Maine by the mile. There are few better ways to start your day than with a biscuit. In Biddeford, that's easier than ever to do. Biscuits & Company is the brainchild of Stacy Cooper. It churns out handmade biscuits all day, almost every day. On the corner of Alfred and aptly named Bacon Streets, the restaurant with its baking dish menus and inspiring wall quotes is not exactly what you'd expect in a city known for its drugs and debauchery.
Biscuits are accessible, they're homey, anybody can make a biscuit.
The grains in the biscuits, the butter, the jam are all Maine local.
That's what we like.
The biscuits are square-shaped for efficiency.
How would one go about just eating one off the tray?
Just eating a biscuit? Well, you know, these are beautiful. So, you know, see how it's got that nice little natural split? So I would just split it like that. Yeah, and they're still warm, so I would get some butter on that. I don't know if I have any butter around right now, but...
There was some over here.
Oh, there was, yeah. Oh, there, now it's melted. So see, we were premature. Andrew's gonna brush these with some melted butter.
You want me to get the inside of that one?
Sure, get the inside, why not? There. And then the real thing would be to put some jam, too.
Once you have your superb biscuit, you can do as I did. Sit down among some good company and hear a good story.
When I look around here, I see exactly what I envisioned. You know, I think the other thing that I was after was sort of touching people's hearts in terms of tagging a memory somehow. Everybody's connected to biscuits. Everybody has a story about their grandmother's biscuits or their aunt's biscuits or somebody made biscuits, and there's always some kind of an emotional connection.
Or they went to KFC one time.
Or they went to KFC and got a bad biscuit.
Once you're fueled up and ready for your day out on the town, go take a $15 mill tour at the Biddeford Mills Museum. Before Biddo started exporting biscuits, you were more likely to see blankets and pillows made here, and on a big, big scale. In the 1800s, these big brick mills were first constructed to harness the power of the Saco River. Immigrants from all over the world came to Biddeford for good-paying jobs making all sorts of fabric products. That continued through the 2000s when the last of the textile production stopped. Today, you can take a tour of the mills with people who used to work there, like our tour guides, Mo and Dave.
I don't have to tell you about the map, right? You already know I'm not going to...
Oh, yeah, you don't have to explain it. Whatever you normally do is what we want to do. On the tour, you'll see plenty of the present and the past.
See, if you needed a part for a broken machine,
you'll get a look at the parts of the mill repurposed for 3D printing and office space. But our favorite part was checking out the empty rooms.
There's a sawtooth roof. It was made to let the heat out to start off with. Part of the 13-2 building. As time went, they had to put screens up there because the pigeons kept coming in and pooping on the goods that we had down there.
The massive spaces and narrow tunnels where generations of people worked to drive Biddeford's economy forward. The mill tour is capped off by a look at an awesome hidden grotto, kind of like the Bat Cave. The massive cavern was dug out by laborers so water could flow into it to power the mill machinery. Urban splunking? Yeah.
I like the history of the mills and so forth, but I'm glad the mills are being renovated and being used and not being torn down and not being neglected. So it's fantastic as far as I'm concerned.
The mill's slow decline did have a lasting impact on Biddeford itself. Like other Maine communities, when the major employers stopped hiring, folks had to find work elsewhere. That's part of the reason downtown Biddeford has some empty storefronts and a few parts that are a little dreary looking. Around the corner from Biscuits and Company, just down the street from the mill buildings, is one of the areas Biddeford gets its reputation for. Folks who live here say opioid use and prostitution are problems quite literally in their backyards.
When you look around on this street, you know, it's quiet right now, but you say that it's not always like this.
No, it's everywhere. It's everywhere down the street. They'll pull up out front of the house. They'll do trades, their drug deals and stuff, and you can see it happening, but nothing you can do about it because they're gone before the cops can get here.
You had said you have kids?
Yeah, grandchildren that come to visit.
What do what are some of the things that you have to worry about living here?
Well, finding needles on the ground. In the parking lot back there, we see a lot of drug deals going on, some prostitution going on. We've chased people off. People were coming through the yard, but we talked with the landlord to put up the fence to detour them from coming through to protect the kids.
If you weren't on this assistance, would you be living in this neighborhood?
No.
Where'd you
No.
want to live?
I think I'd love to live in like Old Orchard or Scarborough, maybe. I'd like to move out of here. It's scary. It's not a comforted feeling. You can't leave your windows open at night. You have to make sure everything's locked. You can't trust people.
Across the city, a few miles, but in other ways a whole world away, is Biddeford Pool. This is a beach community that in some ways resembles parts of neighboring Kennebunkport. There are beachy houses and really big beachy houses, but unlike some of Maine's other summer hotspots, it's not as crowded here.
And most of the time, even on a weekend, if you come get here by 11 o'clock, you can generally still find a parking space.
If you feel like skipping the mill tour, you can come here to go on a lighthouse tour on Wood Island instead. It's free, though you have to reserve way in advance. You'll get a nice boat ride and a ghost story out of the whole deal.
This island supposedly is jinxed and haunted, right?
That's what they say.
And why is that?
Well, it goes back to the 1890s. There were two people out here that lived on the island, on the other end of the island, Mr. Milliken and Mr. Hobbs. And Mr. Milliken, he was a fisherman and farmer out here, and he rented his converted chicken coop to Mr. Hobbs. And so Mr. Hobbs was something of a ne'er-do-well. And he went over to Old Orchard Beach and one night and got drunk. Now, remember that Maine was supposed to be dry back in the 1850s and on. Eventually, he went into his house, Mr. Hobbs did, and came back out with a rifle. And in the argument ensuing, the rifle went off and he killed Mr. Milliken. He went back to his house and he committed suicide. So then move ahead 100 years. We have had all kinds of reports of strange events happening. One of our keepers, they would turn off their calculator at night. It would be turned on in the morning. They couldn't find grease pencils. They found grease marks up near the ceiling and a whole stash of grease pencils up in the attic.
If you get shut out of a Wood Island tour because too many senior citizen book clubs took your spot, fear not. There's plenty to see on shore.
And you can see all the way back to the hotel.
Kimberly Billett has been coming to Biddeford Pool since she was born. She has a nice house right on the water that's been in her family for a long time. A really, really long time.
My grandfather, who was Reverend Stanley B. Hyde, owned all of 7th Street back in the 50s and sold off all those plots of lands for like $500 per deed.
I'm sure that's different.
Biddeford Pool has some small hidden parks, a lot of nice places to just sit and walk. But like other areas in southern coastal Maine, it's getting built up and pricey, which is a relative term, I know.
You have to have a lot of money to stay here, to live here. With the 25 people that I grew up with here, they've all moved out pretty much. Maybe there's a couple that still rent houses down or own houses down on Mile Stretch, but no, none of my friends live in Biddeford Pool anymore. None of them do. And I inherited my house. I could never have paid $1.1 million for the house that I'm living in right now. So, you know, I mean, I think that you have to have money to be here or have a family that goes back 7 generations. For me to pay $25,000 in taxes when I'm a retired teacher and my take-home pay is $30,000 as a retired teacher, I'm going to be one of those people that's going to be sticking up a for sale sign pretty soon. No, I'm not selling my house, so don't everybody come to me and say, what's your house? I want to buy your house. But I mean, it is really too bad that those of us that are just school teachers or factory workers or fishermen or lobstermen cannot actually live in Biddeford Pool per se.
I promise we aren't ending this series on that downer. Instead, we're ending it here at the East Point Sanctuary in Biddeford Pool. This is where I come to clear my head or recover from traveling 1,000 miles around the state I call home. Maybe I wouldn't do that at sunrise, but hey, we had to make the end of this show pretty. I don't have any profound thoughts to offer, only that we hope you got an idea for your next adventure from us, and a glimpse into what Maine is really like, the good and the needs improvement, the kind of stuff you'll only understand after you see Maine by the mile. So that was part 1, unedited, with the exception of a few words that we took out because some people found them offensive. The following is a letter that somebody wrote in after seeing that part 1 without any of the context that I'm giving you right now. His name is Mark. Here's an excerpt of Mark's message. I know this self-described clueless 20-something thought he was being witty. I suspect his travel series may have been part of a larger assigned effort to attract younger viewers to the station and to the website. I'm a native of Biddeford, however, and once lived on Congress Street, right around the corner from WCSH. One thing I do know, every Maine municipality has its challenges, and Portland is no different from Biddeford in that regard. Therefore, I'm going to make the gentle suggestion that perhaps lame attempts at humor, using these harsh social realities as fodder, are something that Dustin, could excise from his future professional reporting. WCSH certainly has enough seasoned pros on staff who could mentor him. To Mark and everybody else who wrote in, this is our reply. Biddeford is what happens when passion, love, craftsmanship, and talent merge into something beautiful. What, you say? How? That doesn't make any sense. And aren't you the guy who said this place was nothing more than a trash heap? Let me try to explain, and this time, be super clear. I don't hate Biddeford, Biddeford doesn't hate me, and there's a whole bunch of stuff I didn't show you for reasons we don't have time to get into and frankly don't matter. What matters is this pulled pork sandwich. It's called the Gannon and can be found at a modest joint in downtown Biddeford called Yetto's Restaurant. Yetto's is the brainchild of Brian and Jackie Hardin, who fell in love with the brickwork architecture and bustle of a city where the color of your shirt collar doesn't matter the way it used to.
Maine is one of the 2 places that I always really loved whenever we traveled across the country. The other one was Arizona, but Maine doesn't have any weird, scary bugs. Brian and I sort of connected through our passion of food, and that ended up leading us to wanting to open a restaurant. And it was kind of a love at first sight story. We came to Biddeford, we looked around, we started to meet the people, and we kind of fell in love with it. And I honestly don't think we would have opened a restaurant had we not come to Biddeford and seen how much of a sense of community there is here. I'm 25, I will be 26 at the end of this month, and Brian is 28. For me, it feels really good to have accomplished something at this age.
Jackie and Brian have poured their souls and a bunch of coffee into this sauce and their restaurant. In much the same way, Biddeford's Deputy Police Chief Joanne Fisk has spent the past 2 decades working in this community and her entire life living in it. What do you think we missed big time in the first piece? Because I know you watched it. What was your reaction, and what was the thing that was like, wow, that was where I was looking for this and just didn't find it?
I think it didn't come across as the community with a heart. And I think this community has a lot of heart. And I think our young people want that sense of community, that sense of belonging, that you walk down the street and you stop and you talk to your neighbors, that they can go to the restaurant across the street or in some of the old mills and there's a sense of comfort. They feel comfortable here. I don't ever want to leave here. Biddeford, it's just unique. It's the heritage of the Canadian culture that came over. It was always labeled a blue-collar community. And I think that transition or that label has left, or at least I hope it has, and we're just a community, not labeled. We're not white-collar, we're not blue-collar, we're a community.
What surprised you the most about the transformation?
I don't think anything has. I think I always knew it could be this and hoped it would be this.
Wait, this place wasn't full of babies eating ice cream and restored water fountains? There was a dark before the gentrified gleam shining down upon the restored mill buildings? Might there actually be a reason why Mainers put metaphoric caution tape around this town, besides an intense football rivalry? I asked the president of Biddeford's Historical Society, Dana Peck, about it.
When Merck moved into town, the idea was we could not continue to put trash in landfills. The alternative was incineration. It's just that we were not ready as a culture for that. We weren't ready from a technology point of view to make that happen.
The last time I showed you Biddeford, I neglected to talk about the trash incinerator, the Maine Energy Recovery Company, or MERC. This hulking mass of metal and concrete sat in the middle of downtown from the late 80s till the mid-2000s, vomiting all sorts of trouble into the air.
Did not work smelling-wise. Everything that, it was the ashes that when they burns up, if you didn't have a good burn, you'd have ashes that would blow all over the cars and homes and people. There were a lot of environmental issues that sprung out of that, so that it was just not a good situation.
And I'm sure in terms of the quality of life in this immediate area around it, that went down too.
It did. It took a real nosedive. People did not want to be associated with a community that was as bad as we were from a pollution point of view.
But that's the past. Biddeford is moving on, and so are we, to the hippest spot in town to get your hair finessed. The final stop on our return. Man, that was a bad pun.
If you were in charge of my hair, what would you do to it?
If I was in charge of it?
Yeah.
I would clean that up.
Woodgrain Barbers is Maria Ramos's dream materialized out of clippers, product, and funky bright lamps. The shop is a big bounce back, happening at the same time as Biddeford's. Maria went to prison 3 times after a life as a big-time drug dealer, a journey that started in her childhood in a Bridgeport, Connecticut housing project.
I went to school, but I still had a side of me that just kind of adapted to my environment. And my environment was violent. It was full of drugs, prostitution, violence, anything that was illegal, name it, it was there.
I can't do justice to Maria's whole Orange is the New Black-esque story, how she met her gorgeous wife Kate, and the way she got to Maine, at least right now. It's really good, and the best way to hear it is from sitting in her chair for an hour like I did. At some point in Maria's story, she'll tell you all about why she came to Biddeford now, and why she thinks anyone thinking about plunging into their own business needs to run off the diving board into this town.
You have people that's coming from Brooklyn, New York, investing in this area. And this is the best time to get in. If there's an open space and you're thinking about opening a business, hop onto it, because right now is the time. Don't wait next year. Don't wait for 2 years, because someone already sees the potential and they're going to take that dream from you. You know how sometimes you speak something into existence, and if you don't move fast, the next person takes your idea and makes it happen. It's going to be the lost thing.
I saw energy like Maria's 2 years ago when I came to Biddeford. The people in this city represent the best of Mainers. Kind, welcoming, giving, supportive of each other. The places in Biddeford, the beaches, the sheep farms, the gritty downtown bring all the best parts of living in Maine together in one place that is uniquely as rich in diversity and culture as it is in kindness. No one can say with absolute certainty what Biddeford will look like in the decades to come. What I can say without any doubt is a new generation of people from Maine and from away sees its time coming. This generation that wants to lead Biddeford forward isn't interested in defining itself solely by the color of you or your shirt collar. There are moments in our lives when it can feel like everyone is trying to figure out who they want to be what they want to do, trying to give their lives some meaning. To those people, I suggest a trip to this city. It's a good place to get inspired by the work of others and start seeing Maine by the mile.